for joining us today. I have another visionary luminary here that I'm excited to introduce you to. His name is Drew Boyd. He's a LinkedIn learning instructor, a speaker, a teacher, an author, and an innovator. Gotta love that. Drew Boyd is a global leader in creativity and innovation. In addition, he is an award-winning author, a university professor, and international public speaker. Drew teaches businesses, teams, and governments how to solve tough problems, creating a culture of a flowing pipeline of innovation. He has led internal marketing at university, teaching the skills of strategy and persuasion. His writings have been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, Forbes, Industry Week, and Psychology Today, to name a few. Clients around the globe include Macy's, Marriott, 3M, Intel, Toyota, L'Oreal, GE, Kaiser Permanente, and Johnson & Johnson, to name a few. Education includes the United States Air Force Academy and an MBA from the University of Chicago. Welcome to the show, Drew. How'd you get started in LinkedIn Learning?
LinkedIn Learning was sort of an accidental thing, I think. It was largely driven by launching of our first book, our new book at the time, Inside the Box. And I got an email from what was then called lynda.com. And I had been a big subscriber and user of lynda.com. It was great for so many different things on how to use Microsoft Word and Outlook and all these different things. And they were expanding their business library. And they asked if I wanted to do a course. And I didn't know any better. And I said, sure, I'd love to do a course, and made the trip out to California in their studios and just had a great time and got to know the original owner. Her name was Linda Wyman, and her husband, Bruce, which they eventually sold to LinkedIn, which was eventually sold to Microsoft. And so the relationship with LinkedIn Learning and had just grown. Currently, worldwide, I probably have something like 90 different courses and, of course, different languages. So it's been a great relationship with them.
And what are the courses that you offer on LinkedIn?
The courses that I have are eclectic. Let me put it that way. I'm not a sort of a one theme instructor. Most instructors are there because they do Da Vinci, or they do some software program like Microsoft or Word, or any specific theme or business theme like accounting. But because I got started with them early and had so many different things to talk about, my courses focus on creative thinking. But then I started to do marketing courses, marketing strategy, and different things around branding. I have a very popular branding course. But then I also have this set of courses in the sales realm, like sales management and key account management. And it was kind of odd for the folks at LinkedIn, who they organize their library by specific content managers. And so I have this potpourri of offerings, which is nice because people that like my courses in this area, they go over and take these courses as well. So it's a nice palette of offerings.
I like that they're staying up and up on it. There's so many new softwares coming out. Some of them I haven't even heard yet. And yet I think employers are expecting employees to have the knowledge of how to use them. So if LinkedIn can bring them in right off the bat, that would really help our, the world for much better expansion, don't you think?
Yeah, it's what's true is that they have a lot of focus on the university setting where learning goes on all the time. So most universities will have a master's subscription to every student, every faculty member, every staff member gets access. But the real opportunity too is with the corporate learner, big or small. Small businesses get so much out of LinkedIn Learning because they don't necessarily have the budgets for bringing in their own private trainer for how to sell or how to use AI. And now they can go to the LinkedIn library and get quickly up to speed on pretty much anything. It's great. I still use it all the time. Work as I work on more book writing, I use a very functional software called Scrivener, which you've probably never heard of, but it's the best for authors. But I took a LinkedIn course from a wonderful instructor who uses Scrivener and taught me how to use it. So for me, it's so efficient, right? Even as a teacher and a constant learner, right? I go to LinkedIn learning courses all the time.
Well, why don't you share with us that uh, course, or tell us about that software so more people can learn about it?
Scrivener is a software specifically for authors or let's say content creators. And what it is, it's a text editor, just like you would think of Microsoft Word. But what it does is it allows you to catalog all your things by themes, by chapters. And so think of it this way: it's kind of a merger between Microsoft Word and a file finder. Like in Mac, for example, we use a thing called Finder, and in Windows, you have the system settings where you can go and find your files. Well, that's all merged together, and I just like to be able to switch between chapters and move things around and copy things, and you can store all your research on it. You can keep all your images, keep all your uh, anything that's related to your book editing, and continuously create drafts. It can be shared, so it's like Google Drive, where you can have co-authors go in and work on the same draft at the same time. So Scrivener is the name of it. I'm not sure where the name comes from. It's a subscription service, but I haven't found anything better, and it just made my book writing so much more effective than just trying to put everything in one Word file and then constantly update it and keep different folders and go back and forth. This has it all in one place.
I'm gonna have to check that out because I've written a few more books now. So anything to streamline it, make it easier.
Yeah, check it out, Scrivener.
Okay, okay. There's quite a few I'm learning right now that are some I hear of that are not even yet on the mainstream platforms. It's
Huh,
coming. I've been given some access or knowledge, so that's always kind of fun and
cool.
playing around with that. I'm curious, what's your thoughts on like Chat GPT and the AI for writers?
Well, it's the next big thing, and there's I suppose there's two ways to look at AI and ChatGPT. First of all, AI has been around for a very long time. I mean, 30 years, really. So we've been talking about AI. And AI is nothing more than a tool on which to build upon to improve whatever it is you're doing. So on the one hand, I tell my colleagues, my students, let's not lose our minds over this. But at the same time, let's get our arms around it so that we understand how far and how fast it can run to do different things. I'm working right now with some colleagues on the use of ChatGPT for creative thinking. How do you combine systematic creativity methods with ChatGPT to give you a boost? We're very pleased with it. We're very happy with the outcome because ChatGPT can not only extend your own ideation, but give you some new ideas you hadn't thought of that allow you to build on top of it. So it's both efficient and effective. And we like that because people struggle with creativity, but it can apply to anything. So I think the advice I give people is practice with it a little bit on some basic things, and then think about your world and how you combine the two. But again, keeping our feet on the ground to say it's just a tool. It is no more a tool than, say, Microsoft Excel or even a basic calculator. Right? We forget calculators didn't used to exist. Spreadsheets didn't used to exist. The internet didn't used to exist. Google search didn't exist. Now it all exists, and AI is just another log on the fire, so to speak. But I do have to share this one experience, Noel, if you don't mind, because my wife sadly lost a dear friend last week, and she was asked to write a eulogy, and she's not an experienced writer like we are, and I could see she was going to struggle with it, and before she even sat down and just kind of I could see the heavy heart. and the burden of having to write a eulogy and read it at the services. So I went on ChatGPT, typed in a few prompts about the deceased and about their relationship, not long, 3 or 4 sentences, and up came a beautiful 2,000 word eulogy that I gave to my wife, and she was astounded. And not that she was going to use it verbatim, but she could pull from it and begin to put her own words to it. See, to me, that's a classic example of the value ChatGPT is going to have. It makes people more effective and a little bit more efficient in how they use their time.
Okay. I could see that for people who maybe aren't writers, and that'll help them uh, maybe connect more together or create their own content from that, as long as they're not pulling direct word for word. Because as a creative, you kind of are putting your own energy and frequency behind it. And I do know when I start going in these realms of expansion and learning, I I find myself just getting going outer and further, and then more ideas come into me as I'm growing internally. So that's my process. I think it's probably different for every single person, just based on their genetic makeup, on what they're really good at and what they're supposed to be doing with their mission and sole purpose. But I can also see for people who are struggling or trying to run a business and they just want to get something done and out, how effective that could be.
Yeah, imagine
So,
you run a small restaurant and you just say create a menu of primarily Italian dishes mixed with Korean, and it could give you a very nice menu of things, right? I just pulled that out of the air. Um, and
will it give
like
you the recipes?
I don't know about that, but it probably would. But like
Well,
you,
now that's what I'm talking about. Now that's
yeah.
impressive.
Here's what I tell my students about ChatGPT, because I get this question a lot now. Can you will you your students just use ChatGPT for their assignments? And my answer
Mm.
is, I'm going to make them use it. I, so I'm going to tell them I expect you to use ChatGPT, and then what I expect is you to edit the content to make it your own. Because here's the deal: uh, you're responsible for the content, no matter who produces it. If the content from ChatGPT is wrong, you're wrong, and your grade will reflect it. So I put skin in the game for them and get them used to the idea of seeing it as a tool to boost their productivity. But I'm not worried about them using it or going to try to stop it. Like I think a lot of people, uh, like you, I'm not interested in having it write for me, because my own writing is my ideas. But once I have an idea, I might say, tell a short story about this, dog that ran to catch a frisbee and missed the first time. I don't know, something random, right? And what it can do is give you little snippets to think about, and I like that. It's like a sampler of food. You get to taste little things, little morsels to ultimately decide what things you like.
It might give you some other ideas that you want to write about then.
100%, and that's the point. Why not use it as a little thought starter? And it's not the only thing out there that does this. The again, AI, artificial, but what it really is AI. It's not just ChatGPT, and we have to remember that. And so, little idea boosters, those kinds of things have been around a long time, and ChatGPT is just those on steroids. It does it very quickly and probably more thoroughly. So let's acknowledge the fact that the technology is pretty cool.
Okay, I hear you. I get you. Okay. Well, and
I
it's good to dabble on both sides because you can't boycott everything. You have to
no,
integrate it.
here's the thing: ChatGPT. I call it the broken leg queue. The broken leg queue is ChatGPT will miss a big factor that you in the equation that it doesn't understand. It's machine after all. And so my very first experiment with ChatGPT was just to put in something, and I thought, well, I'm expecting my first grandson. So I remember I was in London at the time, and I was in my hotel room, and I thought, oh, I'll just try this stuff out. And I typed in type a letter to my new grandson named Oliver. He wasn't due for like 7 months, and And so I hit the button, and up came this beautiful letter. It says, "Oh, dear Oliver, I'm going to look forward to playing with you, and you're going to be the light of our life." This very, very nice, wonderful, warm letter. But then at the very end, it says, "Love, Grandma." and and I said, "That's the point. That's where people have to remember that it's just a machine, and it'll miss the big cues." We call it the broken leg cue because it's like if you were betting on horses. You would look at the statistic and you would bet on the horse with the best statistics, and if the horse had a broken leg, you wouldn't know it. So you would still bet on the horse without seeing that it had a broken leg and wasn't going to be able to run the race correctly. So but machines will miss the broken leg cue.
They're practicing being human.
What humans, somebody, it's a couple things. A colleague of ours, a LinkedIn learning instructor, says, we don't need to work on human artificial intelligence. We have to reduce human ignorance. And there's a lot to that, right?
Bingo.
That ignorance is really the biggest problem we have today. It's not world hunger. It's not this or that. It's just our lack of knowledge about certain things to give the full data set to give us abilities to make good decisions. Uh, and and I think the way I'm looking at AI is not to make the machine better, but to make me better. AI is there to make humans better at being humans, not machines at being humans.
That makes sense. Yes. Help us think differently. And I know you talk about this, thinking differently. What are your tips and suggestions on how to start to think differently?
Well, I preach a philosophy that's wrapped around this method and sort of my life's work at this point, called thinking inside the box. What's interesting is that for thousands of years, everyday innovators have used patterns in their inventions, usually without even realizing it. And those patterns are now um, embedded into the products you see around you every day. Think of these patterns as the DNA of a product or service. Imagine if you had a way to extract that DNA and reapply it to any product, process, or service that you wanted to innovate. What these patterns do, and by the way, surprisingly, 5 patterns explain the majority of innovations in our world today. And
Hmm.
what these patterns do is they regulate your thinking for you. They channel your ideation for you. And they form the basis of this method called systematic inventive thinking. But some quick tips on how to be more effective right now. One is to harness the power of constraints. We use these pattern-based techniques under very tight constraints, not out of the box, but actually very much inside the box. Here's a quick example. What if I told you I wanted you to invent a new piece of exercise equipment? Let's do it. Let's do it, you and me together right now. And what I'm going to ask you is go ahead, Noelle, and invent a piece of exercise equipment for me right now as you sit there.
Oh, okay.
Okay? Do you have something?
Uh-huh.
What is
I
it?
do. I don't know why it came to me, but it did. What it
Okay.
did.
What is it?
It's kind of a machine that helps you do jumping jacks.
Okay. A machine that helps you do jumping jacks. Now, let's do the exercise again. Noelle, I want you to invent an extra piece of exercise equipment that could be used only inside of a car. Quickly, go.
Oh my. Okay.
What do you have?
I have a ball at the end of a string that is going to be swinging around, and you're going to use your eyes to watch it. You're going to exercise your eyes.
Okay. Now, between the two of those, which is more creative? I, I would say,
I don't.
I would
I
say
don't know.
the
Will you tell me?
no, the ball swinging is. What are the odds you'd
Okay.
wake up this morning and say, "Oh, if we only had a machine where the ball could make us exercise." I'm not saying it's the best idea or even, a viable idea. What I am saying is if you want creative ideas, force yourself under constraints. Because what creativity is, after all, it's nothing but the sudden collision of two previously unrelated things. You mash them together They weren't expected. And by constraining your mind, it forces your mind to work harder and smarter. So you want to be creative right away. Put yourself in constraints. They're not a barrier to your creative output. In fact, they're a necessary condition for creativity to occur.
That's interesting because I don't even process information like that normally at all for me. So it's definitely a different way to look at things.
Well, it and what people some everybody has a sort of a different relationship with creative thinking. Some people think they're extremely creative. Others think, "Nah, I'm not creative at all. I've been told all my life that I'm not creative." Not me, but heard people say, "My mother told me I wasn't creative. My friends, my boss, everybody told me I'm not creative." And they'll say, after learning these techniques, they are now a more creative person. So I like the idea that anybody can be creative no matter where you're
Okay.
starting from in the creativity scale. You just have to learn how to use your brain differently. That's the key.
Correct. That's
Yeah,
it.
that's it.
Yes, I have a tendency to use both sides of my brain because I'm ambidextrous. So that's why I think I process things very different. And that to me, the constraints felt like I'm limited for me. So I can understand though those people who also, if a parent tells you you're not something, you're going to believe it even if you can be it and achieve it. So right there, that's limiting you. So just changing the way you're thinking, like your patterns. You said you had, I think you had 5 patterns of thinking. Is that one of them?
The 5 patterns are I'll explain them. Now they sound mathematical, but they're not really math derived. So the first one is called subtraction, where you take something and you imagine removing an element from it, something that you thought you needed. Task unification, that's when you force a component in the system to do a new job, something it wasn't originally designed to do. Multiplication is when you take a component of your product or service, you create a copy of it, but then change it in some counterintuitive way. Division is when you cut and rearrange the product in some way or process or service. It doesn't have to be physical products. You cut the problem and rearrange it in either in location or time or some other way to see a new opportunity. And the last one's a little bit of more abstract, but it's called attribute dependency. It's when you create a correlation between two things so that as one thing changes, another thing changes. Transition sunglasses, for example, you may know this product. And as the light gets bright, the lens gets dark. That's a classic example of attribute dependency. And these patterns are all around you. I guarantee if you look around your home or in your car, you'll see lots of examples of that particular pattern, all the patterns. So in your car, for example, you have windshield wipers that maybe change speed depending on the amount of rain. Classic example of attribute dependency. And so the technique is the method is to learn one technique at a time. You don't even have to learn them all, but find one that works for you. And this is what's described in my LinkedIn learning course, creative thinking.
Okay, makes sense. I do have a consistency of seeing patterns, sequences, and numbers. I'm really bizarre with numbers. I dream in numbers. I can't even look at license plates too much because there's so many numbers. Like my brain stores and wants to process all this data all the time. I can do mathematics, complex mathematics in my head, and short versions ever since I was a kid. So I think everybody's brains, once however they're operating at each point in their lives, because I think it alters with age and how you're sleeping, functioning, eating, feeling. So many things come into play. But as more and more people maybe activate parts of their brain and their DNA, I know you talk about DNA. Can you share what you know about DNA and creativity?
Well, DNA, we use that as a metaphor for a product having these patterns inside, like its own DNA. So, take a product like bifocal glasses, invented by good old Ben Franklin, a long time ago, a couple hundred years ago, and that that invention has in it its DNA is the idea that a lens has been copied and with a different refraction. bifocals are extremely popular, right? They're great even for people that don't need them, because they give people the ability to read at a lower level and all kinds of benefits. So here's a very old invention. If you look at even very old inventions, you'll see these patterns in them, and they exist like DNA. Now, in terms of, are there certain types of people, maybe people more numbers oriented or people that are more visual oriented, that are better at these patterns than other? I haven't found any. I haven't found any gender differences, but I have found differences in, some research will suggest men and women process innovations differently. But in terms of a thinking style that works particularly better or worse with these patterns, I haven't found it yet. Well, at least not yet. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
I love it. Always stay open to expansion and learning new things and growing.
Hmm.
That's for sure. And as you've gone through this, what have you noticed have changed in this industry over the years as you've learned and tapped into these other innovations and realms? What has shifted from the past to the present to the future that you're finding that you think would interest people to hear?
Well, I think the big shifts, it's also, by the way, it's also interesting to look at what is not shifting. Right? Sometimes we get so trend spotting oriented that we omit looking at the something that's not happening, and it's a serious cognitive condition called omission neglect. And we don't tend to look at everything that's available to us. What we see is all there is, and so you see trends, but you don't hear about non-trends. You don't go on the news and they're like, "Oh, nothing changed today in the oceans," right? They only tell you about things that change. It's just as important to look at the things that aren't changing. My wife and I were driving back country road, and it was dark, and she was curious about why so many homes built in the back in the rural areas of Ohio where I live and other places. Why are there homes right on this two-lane road? What drives that? And she was curious about it. And I looked at her and I said, what are you not considering?" And she hates that because she knows I'm about to play some mind game with her. And and I said, "What are you not considering?" And what she's not considering is all the homes that are not on the road. And she went, "Oh yeah, of course." Um, And she said, if you look at the universe of homes that are not directly on the country road, compare those to that are, you might find that country road homes are a pretty small percentage of the total, and it's not a unique phenomena at all. Uh, Now, it still begs the question: why do they choose to live right on a busy road? Trucks going by all the time and stuff. And but I think the same thing with trends. I would caution people, don't get too enamored with trends. Back to your original question, though, what in this industry, if we talk about the industry of learning and development, something I'm passionate about it as you are. I think what trend that I don't really like a lot is this trend to bite-sized learning. And Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book called Blink, and he described how in the blink of an eye we capture enough information to make judgments, and he was exalting it and honoring it, and I'm thinking, no, this is exactly the wrong direction. Don't teach people to just think they can take a small slice out of the situation and know what to do. I mean, if that's all you have, that's one thing, but even when you have it, you still have the ability to imagine, if you didn't blink, if you got to look left and right for a long time and see everything that's there. I think TED Talks have sort of taken a complex subject and said, let's boil it down to 15 minutes, and taught the world to think that you can really master something in 15 minutes. That's ridiculous. And so I'm a big fan of, look, go deep. When I learned creative thinking, I was very lucky to learn this method and practice it and perfect it. I'm considered one of the world's top experts in this method. But I went back and read the classics. I went back and read the old ancient literature about creative thinking because I wanted to be well grounded on the shoulders of others that have built this phenomena called creative thinking. And I don't like this trend towards bite-sized learning. I think the society today, the culture today is you can just absorb. Like my students, when they multitask, I tell them that is a falsehood. That is a myth. Multitasking essentially assures that you're not going to be optimal at any one thing. And I fell for it when I was your age, and I said, "Now you're falling for it. You'll have to get to my age to learn it. That you don't multitask. Go deep at one at a time. Learn it and master it in the moment. You're going to get much farther ahead in life." So that's the trend that I see, and probably not very happy about.
I go back and forth on that, I have to say. Sometimes I, start a book and it's good, and then I start a different type of book.
Me too.
And
I do it.
then
I do that all the time.
right?
Yeah.
Right. So there's some, and then just and projects. When it comes to projects, I literally chunk out time to finish the project,
Hmm.
and I try not to answer my phone or anything. I try and shut the whole world out so I can implement what I'm doing and build the momentum. Because once you have that drive moving through your body, you want to be consistent and keep it going. And then you're done. It's like, huh, all right, next project. Right. So I can see you need to process it and direct that intention and energy.
I had a colleague. I would walk into her office, and her office desktop was pristine, and her back table was pristine, nothing on it, no clutter. And I asked her, I said, "How do you do that? I mean, are you working on anything?" And she showed me. She pulled up, open a drawer. She pulled out one thing at a time. She would work on it, and then when that was done, she would put it away. Now I'm not I'm pretty organized. I'm not a real clutter monger, but I don't obsess with it, right? I mean, if you looked at my desktop now, you would see that I've got different things going on, a magazine over there, a book over here, some notes over there. But it mindfully too, right? This is the way to, I think, get more things done. It's the old think fast or think slow to think fast, right? If you really want to go fast, slow down, right? Take it one bite at a time and make sure you really have it. In the long run, you'll get there. You'll get ahead of the race.
And another thing I do is I keep a notebook by where I sit to watch TV or read or hang out. And when I'm watching TV, if there's something that comes across that I like, I'll start taking notes. And I keep it in my book and I tab it and I highlight it and I go back to it. Sometimes it's a quote that I like or
Yeah.
just a piece of information. It's funny because I find myself grabbing that notebook all the time. Even if I
I'm
watch a YouTube channel and somebody's
Yeah.
speaking on a topic I'm more interested about, then I'm like, all right, I'll take notes of highlighting of what I want to go back to.
I don't do
So,
that, but I'm a big fan of mind mapping. Mind mapping, which is a way for me to organize things. The thing about mind maps is that they're very personal. I could show you my mind map, and it wouldn't make sense. You wouldn't be able to make sense of it. But in my mind, it's all mapped out very effectively. I'm looking at my mind map here, and I only do it like every few weeks. Just kind of back and refresh. And as I accomplish things, I line them out, and it's like lists in a bubble format. Working off lists are a very good idea. A lot of people subscribe to list management. I do. I like lists as well. And even when I accomplish something, I'll run back and put it on the list and then line it out.
right?
Right?
Yeah,
Right?
make sure you noted that it was done,
Yeah.
completed.
Well, and yeah, it's kind of celebrated. It's okay, and but that's what works for me. And my maps are just sort of taking that list and building it by themes is all it is, and it's an effective technique. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. Have curiosity to learn, right? Stay
Yeah,
curious. Okay.
curiosity. Yeah, curiosity is an emerging field in itself. And I have a colleague, Stefan von Huyendonk, who is active on LinkedIn, not a LinkedIn learning instructor, but more and more is being written by curiosity as a driver of creative thinking, for example, but many other things as well. It's just really how to harness it more effectively or natural innate curiosity.
Got it. Okay. If I don't ask this question, I just want to ask this one.
All right.
Since you've been in the Air Force, and a lot of people are claiming sightings now, have you ever seen a UFO or a UAP?
I don't think so. I don't really know. I don't really
Okay.
think about it a lot. I have pretty stern feelings that we are alone in this universe. I hate to say it, and
Okay,
there may be other carbon based organisms somewhere, but I think this whole notion is somebody's watching too much Netflix is probably the problem. I'm not a big fan
got
of it,
it.
and yeah, people have seen things, but there's an old adage. Have you ever heard of Occam's razor? The simplest explanation is probably the right one, and just so many things have to be strung together to explain these things that it's just not believable on its face. So I filter that out, and yeah, I don't
Just
spend a
curious.
lot of deep thinking on it. But no, I've never seen it, and if I had, I'd be wow, look at that. And I've seen a lot of strange things, but I just kind of shrug my shoulders and don't over process it.
Got it. What is your superpower, Drew?
My superpower is the ability to think in a very structured and creative way, um, to limit myself, to get better results. And you know, superpower can mean a lot of things. I'm a good explainer too. I think that's one of the things that I've always felt very comfortable at. I'm just really good at. I'm a translator, and this has been a theme in my entire career. Even as a young boy, I was good at explaining things to my friends, explaining things to adults. And I'm a translator between theory, the scientists who come out with new things, and the corporate practitioner who doesn't have the time to delve deep into it. And somebody needs to be that go between, the middleman, the explainer. And I think that's me. I have this passion about science and learning what people are doing out there, but then making it digestible for others. That's what I do day in and day out, and it turns out I'm pretty good at it, and always learning new ways to be even better at it.
Very good. And then you have some books. I'd like for you to share us your books. And I believe you were doing a podcast. So why don't you share about what you're doing these days and what you've created?
My books, I'm very proud of them, and working on a couple more right now. But the first book, Inside the Box, uh, it's a breakthrough system for creative thinking, and it's just a wonderful book that describes SIT. I co-authored it with one of my great friends and smartest guy I know, a guy named Dr. Jacob Goldenberg. And it's published in 19 languages around the world. It's just a phenomenal book. Second book was a book called "So You Want to Be a Professor," and it does a nice job of explaining if you really want to get into the academic life someday, maybe after your corporate life. This book gives you a step-by-step how to really make that transition. It's not easy, and this book does a nice job. It's available on Amazon. And the third book is called Adding Prestige to Your Portfolio. A lot of companies have an opportunity to take anything they're doing, anything, and upgrade it, add prestige to it. Why? Because if you can create a prestige version of what you do, you're showing the world, showing the market that you really are a master of what you're going to do. Not that you're going to sell a lot of them, or that's not the point. The point is to make your products and services, and yourself, by the way, upgrade yourself and add more prestige to who you are personally. But my real passion now is writing children's books. I have five of them in draft, one book for each of the five techniques of creative thinking. They're targeted at third graders. And we've beta tested them with third graders in the classroom, which has been hilariously fun. And third grade, because they have the right level of maturity now to absorb this and to understand it. And they're picture books and they're rhyming books as well. And I'm learning that I'm not a bad poet when I want to be. So that's great fun. If we can bring this method down to the third grade level, oh my God, the gift of creative thinking at such an early age in a structured way is going to make these kids amazing. So we're very passionate about that project right now. Then my podcast live streams every Tuesday and Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern U.S. time. I have a program called Thinking Inside the Box. It's kind of a live stream podcast, YouTube feed, LinkedIn feed, Twitter feed, everything. and I'm enjoying that a lot. I like podcasting. I like creating content in small bites, but depthful enough to create um, interest for followers. There's an old adage that says, "Know your audience." No, what you want to do is know your content. So I just speak about the things that feel like have some expertise of, or can relay the expertise of others, and I really enjoy it. It's so much fun.
Hmm. That's good. You're doing all kinds of different things for all different age groups, seems like.
Yeah.
So, my last question will be, in closing, for you to share the last message you'd like to share with everyone to remember you by, or your message to the universe. Like, what is the last thing that you want to be remembered for?
Well,
No pressure.
yeah. uh, I Yeah, it's an important way to think, though. What is your last and final, your final, if you got it down to, like, if I was talking to my grandson today and say, I want here, if you remember anything through life, the what would be that kernel of information, that key piece of advice? And a lot of it, let me see if I can talk around it and then zero in on it, because I've never had it pr- proposed to me that way, posed how I should give that advice. But I give a lot of advice, and I think it comes down to self care. Really, if you don't take care of yourself, nobody else is going to. I mean, it's not from a selfishness point of view, but love yourself, or be good to yourself. It's okay. Give yourself the gift of knowledge and continuous learning. Give yourself the gift of exercise. Give yourself the gift of relationships. Curate. It goes to stick around people that are all in it for you. Avoid narcissists and passive aggressive people. Right. Be good to yourself, and you're in charge. Right. So you get to decide who's around you and who's not. You get to decide what job you want to have and what you don't want to have, and be judicious and somewhat selfish, self-interest, but in the service of others. That really your self-care is to turn around, not for your own hedonism and consumption, but to give yourself the ability to help others, uh, in big ways and small ways, little small acts and big acts, and giving people little gifts along the way. That's a continuous cycle, so it's a virtuous cycle, but it starts with, and it can't happen if you're depressed, if you're anxious, if you are out of shape, if you're ill. So it's a mantra to live by, right? Self-care, be good to yourself, but in the service of spreading that and goodwill to others around you.
Mm.
Trippy.
Well, there you have it. You wrapped it in a nice little bow at the dot at the end. Perfect. Well, I'm just going to wrap it up right now. Thanks for joining us today and learning from Drew Boyd, and we'll be back with another show